Hello everybody, welcome back to C&S Corvettes in beautiful sunny Sarasota, Florida. It's your Corvette buddy Lyle here to talk to you about more interesting, helpful, exciting, cool Corvette stuff. Today we're going to be covering some of your questions from the comments on our videos, as we do every so often. Tony has been kind enough to put together a grouping of questions that I'm going to do my very best to answer so that you guys have more knowledge about your Corvette. Let's get started. As you're watching this video, if you yourself have a question for me to answer, put it in the comments below on this video and we'll scour that afterwards and see what we can do to help answer those questions in an upcoming video. So Tony has provided me with a beautiful C&S Corvettes embroidered trucker hat full of your questions. Now, I have not read these questions, so I'm going to be answering them on the fly. So let's see what we get. Question number 1. Lyle, question. I typically use 93 or 94 octane fuel in my 2012 Grand Sport. You've mentioned in your videos to use an ethanol-free fuel, but I have only been able to find ethanol-free in 89 octane. What do you recommend between either of these? Well, the answer to that question is, if you are driving this car year-round, you're not putting away for months at a time over the winter, I would say go ahead and continue to use the 93 or 94 octane ethanol fuel. We just really want to stay away from ethanol fuel if the car is going to be sitting for an extended period of time. Because even when you add, gas preservatives and stuff, they don't last more than just a couple of months. If you're going to be, leaving the car for 6 months or more, I would definitely go ahead and do non-ethanol fuel for that. But for this gentleman, I'd say continue with your 93 or 94 octane as long as you're driving the car fairly regularly. Question number 2. Is switching to a fiberglass rear spring worth it on my 68 327 Corvette? Worth it how? Is it going to be a lot less heavy than the steel spring? 100%. Is it going to have smoother actuation? Probably. Is it worth basically double the cost to do that? That's a case-by-case basis, honestly. It's all what you want to do. Obviously, the late run of the C3s, they started putting fiberglass rear springs in them because they did actuate quite smoothly. You didn't have any rust issues with them. And of course, they saved about 40 pounds worth of weight if you had one of the big thick springs in the back. So if it was my car personally, yes, I would spend the money and I would put that fiberglass rear spring on the back, knowing that I wouldn't have to deal with rust issues or anything like that down the road. Question number 3. I will be looking to purchase a 69 Corvette, L68, L71, L89, or a 350. Just going to use to drive around town and occasionally on the highway for a 2-hour trip to a friend's home. I can afford any of these, but what would you consider a smart buy? Smart meaning less to maintain, and is the extra power worth it for what I want the car to do? Are there overheating issues with the big block? I get these questions very, very frequently, and I do my very best to answer them. When it comes to buying a 50-plus-year-old car, if you understand the amount of maintenance, care, and upkeep that's going to go into having that car ready to go in your garage at any given time, great. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a very different driving experience than a modern Corvette. The big block, for collectability, the big block tends to be the more desirable to collectors. It will retain its value a little bit better than a small block. However, if it's a car you actually plan on driving and you're not going to be drag racing, all that weight up front is going to compromise the nimbleness of the car. You're going to get absolutely horrific fuel mileage by modern standards. I had a 73 big block that I drove every day for a year, and I think the best I ever got of that car was about 6 miles to the gallon. My suggestion to this gentleman would be, find the car you want regardless of what engine is in it, but I will say that there are advantages to the small block as far as fuel mileage, as far as lack of a big hunk of weight up at front. And I would also say that your concerns about heat coming through the firewall are legitimate with a big block. If you want something you're going to just enjoy pleasure cruising and you're not looking to set any land speed records, the small block's probably the way to go with that. Just please educate yourself on what is going to go into keeping that car happy, healthy, and safe for regular use. Question number 4. Do you recommend a block heater for a garage-stored Corvette over the winter? Also, should I use a battery tender with the battery in the car, or should I store the battery in the house with a battery tender attached? Minnesota winters are cold. Yes, they are. So, as long as you have good antifreeze in your car, you shouldn't require a block heater to keep it from freezing. I don't think that's necessary. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and we, obviously had very cold winters too. We never had block heaters on any of our family vehicles. So I don't think that's necessary. If it was something where you wanted to actually use the car in the winter, a block heater might make sense, but every other part of using that car in the dead of winter in Minnesota is probably suicidal. As far as the battery goes, if it were my car, I would take the battery out, keep it in the house over the winter, and I wouldn't necessarily keep a tender on it. What I would do is when spring sprung and I was ready to put that battery back in the car, I would do a very low amperage, long-term, full-day charge on that battery before putting it back in the car so that it is healthy and you're not shocking the battery by trying to throw a bunch of charge on it all at once. That is what I would do. Itty bitty little question number 5. Do you think the 2013 427 convertible will hold its value? In a word, yes. They didn't make very many of them. It was the only time you could get the LS7 in convertible form. I think that car, while I don't see it going jumping up in value to $100,000, I believe, yes, they will continue to maintain their value. Just make sure to educate yourself on the LS7 and some of the proactive things you may have to do to the heads in that car to make sure it doesn't go kablooey on you. Question number 6. I have a 1978 Silver Anniversary Coupe. I know that there can be issues on C3 Corvettes with heat penetrating into the passenger compartment. What are the best things to do to minimize the heat penetration into the cabin? Well, on the C3s, there is a serious problem with heat penetrating into the cabin because there isn't a whole lot of material between you and the engine or the exhaust. Commonly, it is coming from the front where the engine is. You really don't have to worry so much about the rear behind the seats. I would say if you were going to try to mitigate that heating, remove the seats, remove the carpet, remove the center console, and put down that thin foil heat barrier all the way up as far as you can get it up under the dash, like around the pedals and stuff, as high as you can go, and continue that all the way back to the rear bulkhead behind the seats. Once that's done, you put all the carpet and everything back in it. That's going to do more than just about anything to keep your interior from becoming overly warm from the engine and the exhaust running under it. Lucky question 7. I have a 1981 Corvette that I've had since 1991. The fuse block is corroded and needs replaced. Painless or Nor-American wiring make harnesses for C3 Corvettes that I can find, so the fuse block is nowhere to be found. That goes through the firewall and plugs into the front loom, right? So the question is, where can I find that fuse block, bulkhead, and is that a job for an electrical shop or Corvette specialty repair shop? Nutshell the inquiry as needed. Please and thank you, sir. So the one company you didn't go visit was Electric Limited. That's Lectric. There's no E in it. Electric Limited. They make all of the reproduction wiring harnesses, including the fuse panel, for the C3. I highly recommend that if you don't have a Corvette specialty shop near you, at least find a shop that works on cars from the 60s and 70s as their normal business, so that when they do get in there, they're not having to figure out what goes where, and they will especially understand the due care that it's going to take to remove the dash and the things they need to remove safely, so you aren't having to replace those pieces as well because someone was a little too ham-fisted in their labor. That would be my answer to that. Question number 8, the Ocho. What fuel stabilizer do you recommend for seasonal storage? I do still drive some in the winter, but not a consistent amount. I use ethanol-free fuel, good on you, but want to add protection for my car. Honestly, the additive that has been used for years and years that I still recommend is Sta-Bil, S-T-A-B-I-L. It's the best one out there. It's been around forever. and it burns cleanly through your car, that's what you want to use. Finally, question number 9. We got a bit of a long one here, so bear with me. My C5 Z06 has been meticulously kept from day one, with everything new and rebuilt and ready for track use, with all the mods, including the heads, etc., at a $15,000 price tag. My Z06 has 82,000 miles and is worth, in my opinion, $26,000. I've seen them go for that and more in the area that I live. Knowing what may need to be done with the 2008, in your opinion, would trading my Z06 for this Stingray be worth it? I would attempt a straight across trade, no money involved, except probably the title, taxes, and other DMV fees. My other considerations are that it's newer, just what the wife keeps telling me to do, get a newer car, and I do like the atomic orange, which she doesn't like at all. Although she didn't like my Millennium Yellow Z at first either, but now she's okay with it. This is one of those questions that I try to give counsel on, but really it's all about what you're going to want to do in the end. Between the two cars, if money's the same, and you've already invested that much in your C5 Z06, honestly, newer doesn't necessarily mean better. It sounds like this guy has invested a lot of time and money into making this car exactly what he wants it to be. As long as the car is healthy, it's got 82,000 miles on it. We know that they're good to well past 200,000 miles if you take care of them. I don't know that I would be moving into a more electronically complicated car than the one I've already got. The C6 does have some advantages with the creature comforts, but you're not going to be getting any more power considering what you've done to that Z06. It'd be a different experience. I don't know that it'd be a better experience. In this particular case, I wouldn't do that. If I was looking to get a newer car for this gentleman, I would say move up to a C7. That is going to be a dramatically different driving experience, is going to be newer, probably able maybe even to get a additional warranty on it to help with service down the road. I wouldn't bump up just to a C6. I would go C7 or even C8 for a truly different experience to get more out of your car than you're already getting with the cool stuff you've done to that C5 Z06. And that ends question and answer period for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, I hope this generated some questions in your mind about your car. Please put them in the comments below and I will go through them, and Tony and I will pick some more to answer in the coming weeks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great week.